Hey, it's Kelly with citruscycles.ca. I'm here with R&M's Culture e-bike. Made in Germany, the Culture is available in two different frame styles. The regular frame you see in behind there, and the Mixte frame with the sloping top tube. The regular frame is available in two colors, the denim and biscuit, while the Mixte is available in blossom, you see here, and also in the denim. There are three different sizes and three different transmissions, including two with the Gates carbon fiber belt. You can add a suspension fork with a suspension seat post, a rear carrier, a frame lock, and there's some different display options from Bosch, such as the simple LED remote or the fancier Purion display. Speaking of Bosch, the Culture features their new lightweight but powerful SX motor and a completely integrated 400 watt-hour Compact PowerTube battery, which you can extend with a 250 watt-hour PowerMore external battery. In this video, I'm going to start with a quick overview of who the Culture is for and why you might want one. I'll give a brief overview of why you would want a bike made by Riese and Mueller. Now, this video will be quite long, so feel free to skip around. After the quick overview, I'll dive into all of the details and then I'll do a ride test. And you can also find the complete details, including the specs and pricing in Canada, on our website at citruscycles.ca. There you'll find our contact information. If you want to set up an appointment to come try it yourself here at our store in Chemainus on Vancouver Island, or if you want us to ship one to you pretty much fully assembled anywhere in Canada. If you are in Canada, you can also reach out to us with any questions. If you're not in Canada, you'll need to contact your local R&M dealer, as we won't be able to assist you. Now, I should mention, I'm not getting paid for this video, so I'm going to share my own personal opinions and experiences. Of course, Citrus Cycles is the way that I provide for my family. So if the Culture isn't the bike that you're looking for, you can find lots of other great bikes and video reviews on our website at citruscycles.ca. My kids always tell me that I'm supposed to tell you about the bell to subscribe to our YouTube channel. So you can do that. And speaking of bells, it does use a very cool nog bell with quite a pleasant sound. Okay, with that out of the way, let's talk about why you'd want a Culture. It is a great looking bike, very modern, minimalistic, almost organic, with these really round tubes here. The bend on the top tube is quite striking. The curved seat strut loop. It's really a very striking bike, but it's also a really great bike to ride. It's super comfortable with this upright riding position. You've got the swept back bars there. But what's interesting is that it's comfortable in a fun and exciting way. I think that part of what makes this a real joy to ride is the new Bosch SX motor. It is a lightweight motor from Bosch that only has 55 Newton meters of torque compared to their top-end CX motor with 85 Newton meters. However, I think because the motor, the battery, and the bike are relatively light compared to some of the other R&M bikes, around 48 pounds with the battery, it feels faster and more powerful than the specs suggest. To me, it feels really responsive and in tune to my riding, much more so than a lot of other motors in this lightweight, low-torque class. Now, you can stick around or skip over to the ride test to see what I mean. Now, aside from the beautiful styling and enjoyable riding characteristics, you might want the Culture because it was made by R&M in Germany. And it is one of R&M's most affordable bikes, but it still benefits from everything that makes an R&M such an amazing bike. That means it was made by people that are treated well, not only by R&M at their factory in Germany, but R&M insists in transparency in their supply chain and source as much as they can from Europe. Not only does that help reduce emissions with transportation, but it also ensures that everyone involved in creating your bike has been respected, with no forced labor or other questionable practices that we sometimes see in other places around the world. For example, 50% of the frame is recycled aluminum, which has a big impact on energy usage, emissions, and the effects of mining. I'll talk more about R&M as a company later, but an interesting fact for you is that this isn't their first e-bike called the Culture. They actually had a full suspension e-bike, very similar to the Homage, that was called the Culture. And in some ways, I'm surprised they brought back the name, even though it's very apt for this bike. Because if you Google the bike, you'll probably come across some old reviews and photos for the old version, which is a much, much different bike from this one. So let's go for a deep dive into all of the specs and options. Again, this will take a while, so feel free to skip around, especially to the ride test, and then come back if you wish. The Culture is one of the first bikes to use the Bosch SX drive unit. From a technical perspective, this is a really interesting motor from Bosch. It weighs only 2 kilograms, but it still offers 55 newton meters of torque. Now, torque is what gets you up the hills, and their most powerful motor has 85 newton meters. However, despite the low torque, it still feels powerful, responsive, and sporty. There's a number of factors that come together, some of which you really can't quantify in the specs. But when you ride it, you realize this is an incredible motor and very different than Bosch's Active Line Plus motor, for example. In fact, this is a good example of where the specs just don't tell the whole picture. The Active Line Plus from Bosch here has 50 newton meters of torque, so the SX only has 10% more torque for climbing hills. But to me, it feels way more powerful. In some ways, it feels like their top-end CX motor, but Bosch says that it has 50% less pedal resistance and a narrower Q factor. That is the difference between the crank arms. This is the Active Line Plus. Let's go back over to the SX. And so you can tell the SX definitely looks smaller. The crank arms are a little bit closer, probably hard to tell from the video. And it's almost silent. So it's kind of like a lightweight, silent, and responsive CX motor. It also blends right into the frame. You'll notice if we take a look at the other side, the drivetrain side, you can hardly tell that there's a motor in there. So it really just blends right in with the bike. There are a lot of things that Bosch does to set them apart from other motors on the market. One of those things is their software. In fact, Bosch has more people working on the software than on the hardware for their e-bike systems. That may seem strange until you actually ride the Bosch system and experiment with the various modes and realize how important it is to have a natural, smooth riding experience, giving you the power that you need exactly when you need it. In recognizing that everyone will have different needs and expectations, Bosch allows you to use their e-bike Flow app to choose from a variety of different assist modes in your bike. Now, the classic 4 are still there. You've got Eco for the lowest level of assistance, Tour for a little bit more support, Sport for going faster, a little bit of hill, and Turbo for full power. However, we now have other modes such as Tour Plus. Tour Plus is a dynamic adaptive mode that basically automatically adjusts the assist level based on your input. So it can be thought of as a battery saving mode. If you see a big hill coming up, you start pedaling hard, it's going to give you full power. It's going to help you with the kind of that turbo level of assistance all the way up the hill. You get to the top of the hill, you ease off when you're pedaling. This is when sometimes people would forget to take it off turbo. If you've got Tour Plus, it's going to kind of know that you're not pedaling as hard, and so it's going to dial back the assistance to extend your range. You come to a stop sign and you start to get quickly across the intersection because there's heavy traffic. You hammer on the pedals, boom, you get full power to get across that intersection. So the Tour Plus is really a cool mode, very dynamic. They also have another mode called Auto, which in many ways is kind of opposite that. It's more concerned with keeping the speed consistent. So if you're pedaling along and you start lagging a little bit, it's going to increase the assistance level to keep your speed the same. We also have sprint mode on the SX motor here. Super fun. Basically, it's going to reward you for a high cadence. So if you shift to an easier gear and you're pedaling fast and hard, it's going to give you more power. Again, very responsive, really cool setting. And the nice thing is that all of these can be adjusted. So you can choose, oh, I don't want Tour Plus, I want regular Tour, or I want Auto. If you wanted to, you could put EMTB mode, which is a mountain biking mode. Wouldn't really make sense on this bike, but you can do that if you want. But that's the cool thing, is you can download the eBike Flow app and not only change the default levels that Bosch is providing you, but then go in and tweak each of those levels a little bit more. While you're in the app, set up your e-bike passport. That's going to have a picture of your bike, your serial number, all the information, so that if your bike does get stolen, you've got all that in one place. The app has lots of other great features, such as navigation, and it supports over-the-air updates. The Culture is also using the new Bosch Compact PowerTube 400. At 2 kilos, it's a whole kilo lighter than the PowerTube 500 battery. In other words, the 500 battery is 50% more weight for only 25% more range. Now, if you're worried about range, and this is a very efficient motor, so that 400 watt hour is going to get you a long ways. If you're curious exactly how far you can go, Bosch has a range calculator on their website that you can use to put in the specs of the motor, the weight of the battery, yourself, the conditions you'll be riding in. It'll give you a pretty good idea. If you're worried about running out of range though, you can get the PowerMore battery. It's a 250 watt extender. You plug that into the charge port here, and that's going to give you an extra 250 watt hours of power, which is great. It'll just mount onto the water bottle bosses right here. Speaking of charge port cover, this is a nice system here. We just pivot that out of the way. Show that to you again there. And you can get to the charger. Now, you are actually going to have to charge the battery on the bike. And that's because the battery is not removable. Now, that makes the bike a little bit lighter. It means the battery can't be stolen. It means you have this beautiful integration, because if the battery was removable, then we either have to put a mount cover on the battery or a removable cover on the frame, and then it just won't kind of flow like this beautiful design does. But of course that means, although we can remove the battery if we need to by lowering the drive unit here and pulling the battery out, and you're not going to be taking it on and off, say when you transport your bike, or if you need to carry it upstairs, or if you need to bring your battery inside to charge it, this might not be the bike for you, because you don't want to leave this bike outside all winter with the battery in there in freezing cold conditions. You're going to want to make sure that the battery is not left out in the cold, and since you can't remove the battery, you're going to have to bring the bike inside. Now, Bosch actually makes a number of display options. R&M is going to let you choose from 2 of them, but of course we're happy to add any displays that you want once you get your bike. So by default, it's going to come with the Bosch LED remote. This is going to show you your level of assistance, which you control by the plus and minus here. So you can see now it's lit up to green. That's typically eco, but again, you can program that however you wish. And each time I press the button here, I'm going to choose a different level and a different color. We also can see the battery life right here with the 5 LEDs, and the LEDs have 2 different colors. So right now we're at about 95%, and if the battery gets lower, then this LED will eventually go blank. This will turn blue, and then the lighter color, etc. So you can see what assistance level you're on and the battery life at a glance. Get it with the LED remote. It's not going to come with any sort of display. It does come with this SP Connect mount here. So this allows you to mount a phone using an SP Connect case. So here we've got a universal one, and basically that kind of clips on. I'll see if I can do it with one hand here. Clips on sideways like that, and then twists, and now that's secure onto the bike. And of course this is a universal one, so we can just pull this out and loosen that off, put your phone in there, tighten it up, put that back in. It's quite a secure mounting system. SP does make phone-specific cases as well. This is a universal, which is nice because if you already have a case you like on your phone, you can continue to use it, but if you like their cases, you can get one specifically for your phone, and that'll securely mount it. To mount your phone, well, with the LED remote, you can't see your stats, your speed, or anything like that. So if you put your phone on there, then you can use Bosch's eBike Connect app, and that's going to give you all the stats that you need, navigation, all sorts of things like that. It shows you the level of assistance, your range, your riding time, all the information you'd need. And so it's easy to add that using the SB Connect if you wish. Bosch themselves actually offer the smartphone grip that you could use instead. The cool thing about this is it will actually charge your phone while you ride, and again works with pretty much any phone. You don't have to have a specific case for that. R&M doesn't offer that as an option. I guess you're just trying to keep things simple, but of course we can easily add that for you if you'd rather have that. Now the other option that R&M does offer is the Purion 200 display here. You can see it still has those same up and down buttons and the right and left buttons, but it also has a built-in little screen that's going to show you your speed, the level of assistance, your battery life, all of that information. It will turn itself off after a few minutes of not riding, which is what it's doing right now since I didn't take it for a ride. But that is an option. You can choose the Purion 200, and then it's going to give you some more information. Still nice and easy display, pretty straightforward. We'll hit the select button here to get rid of the avoid distracted driving notice. And now, of course, we've got the plus and the minus, and it is color coded just like on the LED remote, but now it actually tells us the levels of assistance, tells us the percentage of the battery life, which is handy. And then the right and left buttons do allow us to go through some different screens here, so we can see the trip distance, we can see our riding time, the range that you've got left based on the level of assistance. So at 92% of battery based on the last few kilometers that we rode, I've got 63 kilometers left. That's going to dynamically adjust, and right now that's on the little on the low side because, of course, when we're test riding, we're always going up and down really steep hills. And so if I then, of course, level out and aren't using as much assistance, then it will recalculate and tell me that I can probably go a little bit further. Battery percentage on the battery there, the power, our cadence, the total distance, and then this is where we can get into our settings. And of course we can still pair our phone with the Purion. If you aren't using the LED remote, you can still mount your phone on the SP Connect here, or you could even add the smartphone grip if you wish, and still use the Purion. So your two display options from R&M are the LED remote or the Purion 200, but of course because it is a Bosch system, not only could we put that smartphone grip on if we wanted to, but if you preferred a kiosk like the kiosk 300 here, or the kiosk 500, which is a little bit bigger, gives you a little bit more information, we can do that as well. All of those displays are interchangeable. One of the interesting things with the kiosks is you can also do navigation with your phone. The kiosk itself doesn't have a GPS built in, it's using the one built in your phone, but you can send directions to the kiosk display as well. Of course, if you had the smartphone grip or even just use that SP Connect and use the Bosch e-bike Flow app, you can also do navigation that way. So you can probably tell I'm pretty excited about this Bosch SX drive unit. And of course, it has all the benefits of Bosch. Highly reliable, easy to get service. Pretty much most bike shops deal with Bosch, so it's easy to get parts and service. The battery, even though it's not removable, it is a Bosch battery. It's not a Riese and Mueller battery. That tells us that 7 or 8 years from now, should you need a replacement battery, you'll be able to get that because it's really important to Bosch to make sure that all of their parts are available well into the future and that it's serviceable, so it's not a disposable system. Which is really important to us. We want to make sure that this is going to be something that's going to last a really long time and easy to get parts and service on. Being a mid-drive motor, of course, now the weight is low and central on the bike, which is what we like to see. It means that the motor is part of your transmission. So when you change gears, because the motor is helping you turn the chain or the belt, it means that now the motor is also in an easier gear. So it makes it a lot more efficient, a lot easier to climb hills. If you had a motor in the rear wheel instead, that motor's turning the wheel and not the chain, so when you change gears, it has no effect on the motor. And of course, the ride feel will be a lot different. The motor helping you turn the chain rides just like a regular bike. It's very, very responsive with that integrated torque sensor. Sometimes people are concerned, well, there's no throttle and I really want a throttle on my bike. And we have to kind of take a moment and consider, well, why is there a throttle on your bike and why do they put that on inexpensive bikes? And generally the reason for that is that when you have a hub motor, when you have an inexpensive torque sensor, no torque sensor as we often see with hub motors, there's a delay between when you want the power and when it kicks in. Often you have to turn your crank arms 1 or 2 times before you get the assistance. Not so with a Bosch system. As soon as you put force on the pedals, it knows that you want the assistance and the assistance kicks in immediately. So they'd put a throttle on a bike because there was that delay, you can't get going, what are you going to do? You're going to use a throttle. With the Bosch system here, and you'll see that in the ride test, there's no delay. As soon as I put the assistance, as soon as I put pressure on the pedals, the assistance kicks in right away. I can get across that intersection no problem. Here's the thing about a throttle. It's not going to give you more power than the motor's capable of giving you. So if you put the Bosch system on Tour Plus or on Turbo, and you're going up a hill, it's going to give you full power. You don't need a throttle to get full power. We don't want to have a throttle for safety reasons. A lot of places now, provincial parks, national parks, a lot of municipalities are saying no e-bikes with throttles. It's just causing too much trail conflict, too many safety concerns. It's completely unnecessary unless you don't want to pedal at all, but you know, it's a bike and bikes are fun to pedal, especially when you've got the assistance from that SX motor. So that's my little rant about throttles. It's not necessary. If you come and try this, you'll see exactly what I mean. We often get people that are kind of doubtful to get on this and like, wow, this is so responsive. What was I thinking? I don't really need a throttle at all. And that way I can legally ride it anywhere a bicycle is allowed to go. Okay, so I've mentioned we've got the two different frame styles. This is the Mixte. You can see we've got the sloping top tube here. Now it's not as low of a step through area as we may have with a true step through like the Nevo or something like that, but it's actually fairly low, fairly easy to get on and off. And then of course you've got the regular frame here. And even with the regular frame, we've got this really stylish kind of bend in the top tube here. Beautiful, beautiful bikes. So you've got the two frame styles, and we've got the three different colors. So we've got the denim. This is available both in the regular frame and the Mixte. With the Mixte, we've got the unique blossom color there, as well as this denim. In addition to the denim for the regular frame, we've got what R&M calls biscuit, which is kind of a creamy color. Now we also have three different sizes, and so you can check the size recommendations on our website at citruscycles.ca. Options as well when you're configuring the bike. So this one here has the suspension kit. That means we're going to have a suspension fork here with a through axle, which is nice for stability. It's going to give you a little bit more comfort over the bumps, and to give you more comfort, it's also going to have a suspension seat post here. Your carrier is also optional. It's a MIK HD rack, which means it can carry up to 27 kilos and will work with any standard bags, but it'll also work with an MIK bag as well. To the weight, as would the frame lock, but this is super convenient. This is going to lock your rear wheel so nobody can ride the bike away, and then there's an optional chain that you can use to loop around to secure it to a bike rack. Choose from three different transmissions: the Touring, the Silent, and the Vario. So this here is the Touring. We've got the Shimano Q's drivetrain. It's a 10-speed. The Q system was designed by Shimano to be longer lasting, more durable, and we are finding that it is definitely lasting longer than previous chain cassette derailleur combinations. It has an 11 to 48 tooth cassette, so you can see that's a nice big climbing gear on there. That gives us a 436% gear ratio. So if you've got lots of really steep hills you want to climb, then the Touring might be worth considering because it does give you the widest gear ratio. That means it's going to give you the lowest low gear and the highest high gear. Now, the downside, of course, is we still have a chain that does need to be cleaned and oiled from time to time. You can't shift while you're stopped, right? The bike has to be moving and you have to be turning the crank arms in order for the chain to kind of jump up and down the gears there. The chain and the cassette, they will wear out. The derailleur will also wear out. So at some point you're going to have to replace all those. Of course, if you're really good at keeping up with the maintenance on it and cleaning and oiling it, it'll last a little bit longer. The shifting will probably need to be adjusted from time to time. That's just normal bike stuff. And it's a little bit noisy when it's shifting. For a quieter ride and a lot less maintenance, then you may want to check out the Culture Silent. So this uses a Shimano Alpine 8-speed internally geared hub, and this is one of the two options that uses the Gates carbon fiber belt. R&M calls it silent because it is silent when you coast. There's no ticking noise unlike the other two drivetrain options. Now, it does only have a 307% gear ratio, so it doesn't have as low of a low gear if you've got crazy steep hills like it does on the Touring, and it doesn't have maybe as high of a high gear for going fast like the Touring. But it really doesn't require much maintenance. The chain's not going to fall off because it's a belt. You don't have to clean and oil the chain because, well, it's a belt. All of the gears are enclosed inside the hub here, so they're not going to go to adjustment. And overall, not only less maintenance, but a lot lower cost of ownership because we're not going to be replacing the belt as often as the chain. And generally that Alpine hub shouldn't have to be replaced like the cassette would be on the Touring. A lot less maintenance. One of the really cool things about the Silent or even the Enviolo, the Vario we'll talk about in a moment here, is that the shifting, you can actually shift while you're stopped. So right now I'm in 3, I can go ahead down to 2, down to 1, or all the way up to 8 while I'm stopped. So if you're cruising along in top gear, stop suddenly. On the Touring Edition, you've got the shifters over here and you're stopped. You can't shift while you're stopped, so it may be hard to get going. With the Silent or with the Vario, we can actually shift the gears while we're stopped, drop down to that easier gear, and away you go. Now I don't have a Culture Vario at the moment, so I'm going to show you the Roadster Vario instead, and the idea is the same. We've got a continuously variable internally geared hub there. I'll show you what I mean by that up here. You've got the little display here. See, the cyclist is going up a steep hill right now. That makes it easy to pedal. Twist this towards me. That gets flatter, so now it's harder to pedal. It's infinitely variable between the highest and the lowest, so I can choose exactly where I want it to be. And of course, I'm not riding right now. I am stopped, and we can shift while we're stopped and while we're pedaling with the Enviolo system. The Enviolo system is a little bit heavier, and it does make some noise when you're coasting, but it has a higher, wider gear ratio, so 380%. So it'll maybe be a little bit easier on the hills, maybe you can go a little bit faster, and it is continuously variable, so that instead of shifting through 8 specific gears on the Alpine, on the Silent, it's infinitely variable. Basically, you've got all the gears in between the highest and the lowest, and it's very easy to shift while you're pedaling. With the Silent here, sorry, this is a Nexus hub. I keep saying an Alpine, I apologize. It's a Shimano Nexus 8-speed hub. And with that, you do have to interrupt your pedaling in order to shift. It's going to be a lot happier with you if you do that than if you try to shift while you're pedaling hard, whereas you can more easily shift while you're pedaling with the Enviolo. And of course, the Enviolo is using a belt, just like the Silent. Speaking of a belt, interestingly, this is actually the Gates CDC belt rather than a CDX belt. What does that mean? It's a little bit narrower. It's not as long lasting. It's not as heavy duty as the CDX belt. It's a little bit less expensive though, maybe a little bit lighter, but I think it was, partly the trying to get this bike. This is R&M's least expensive bike, and so maybe that was one way to bring the price down, is to go with the less expensive CDC belt, which means you'll have to replace it more frequently than the CDX. But the good news is they're actually using the CDX cogs, both on the front and on the rear here. So that means when it is time to replace that belt, you could actually put a CDX belt on instead, and that's going to give you a little bit of a longer lifespan, although of course it'll be a little bit more expensive to replace than the CDC. So let's talk about safety for a few moments, and I'm going to start with the brakes, but before I talk about that, actually, let me just briefly touch on battery safety. And we've probably seen in the news a lot some challenges with fires with lithium-ion batteries and mobility devices. One of the reasons why we love using Bosch is that they are UL certified. Not only the battery, but the motor, the cables, the displays, the chargers, everything all works together to ensure that it's incredibly safe. So as far as I'm aware, Bosch hasn't had a thermal incident. They take this very, very seriously. You can read more about it on their website, but generally speaking, with the Bosch system, you can rest assured that you have a safe and reliable system. As far as safety goes, we also want to have a safe and reliable way to stop your bike. So we have Magura hydraulic brakes. In this case, it's the MTA2. Now, we always want to see hydraulic brakes. Not only are they more reliable, they're self-adjusting, but it's going to be a lot easier to stop e-bike that's a little bit heavier, going a little bit faster than with mechanical brakes. They're self-adjusting, they don't need a lot of maintenance. Now, the MTA2 is an interesting departure for an R&M, as they usually use the MT4 or MT5 from Magura. The MTA2 is Magura's entry-level brake. Now, they're still very effective, and especially for a lighter bike like this one, but it is an example of how R&M was able to get the price on this bike to be a very attractive price point. Now, I'm guessing that cost was only one factor. The brakes are actually a very clean, simple look, and they fit better with the bike because of the way the hose comes out and just the design compared to, say, the MT4 or MT5 would have been. The brake pads are easy to change, which is good, and we've got a nice, good-sized rotor on there for stopping. For safety, we also have a really good front light. This is H Black MR8. It's got these side windows here, so when the light is on, you've got visibility on the side of the bike as well. Of course, we have reflective sidewalls in the tires as well for side visibility, which is really important. Now, this light is about 180 lumens, so that's a good choice for where you'll be riding this bike. Now, of course, if you plan on a lot of riding in the forest at night, we could upgrade to a brighter front light for you. It is very cool. It'll be hard to tell from the video, but this is incredibly bright, visible from all angles. It actually uses COB at LED, which means chip on board. So it has a larger number of LEDs. They're directly on the circuit board, so it's very uniform. I just think it looks really cool and it's super bright. That the tires have the reflective sidewall, which is nice for safety. They are a Schwalbe Big Ben. It's a 2-inch tire. They are quite comfortable. That's the nice thing about the Big Bens. They're a very comfortable ride. They're a bit of a balloon tire, so you can go lower pressure if you wish and have a very comfortable, smooth ride. Keep in mind that the Big Ben, they're not Schwalbe's most puncture-resistant tires, so if you stick with these tires, maybe you want to put sealant in the tubes to help reduce the likelihood of a puncture. Or, you know, you could upgrade to a Marathon tire or Marathon Plus, which is going to be a little bit of a, not quite as smooth of a ride, but a lot more puncture resistant. Now I'm trying to show you something that you probably won't actually be able to see, but this is the Acros Block Lock headset. So this is a good example of where R&M could have saved a few bucks, left that out, bring the price a little bit lower, but it's a nice, important safety feature. What it does is it prevents the handlebars from turning all the way around. So they basically turn to kind of a safe point, at which point it won't turn anymore. So that's a nice little feature that they include on all of their bikes. And of course, you know, what a beautiful bike overall. I've talked a lot about that, but even if we look at the headset here, kind of the way the cabling kind of tucks underneath here and then in through the frame, it's a nice clean look. A little bit about comfort. This is just such a fun bike to ride, and you'll see that in the ride test. And I find this to be really a very comfortable bike, and one of the ways they've achieved that is kind of these swept back bars that are a really comfortable bar. Interestingly, unlike almost the rest of the R&M bikes, we don't have the option of an adjustable angle or adjustable height stem here. It's a fixed angle, fixed height, but with these swept back bars, it seems like they've really nailed it. It seems to be very, very comfortable. Of course, if you really wanted to, you could change out that stem, although it's, you know, it just looks beautiful, to something that has an adjustability if you needed to do that. But I think you'll find that when you come ride this, it's actually really comfortable as it is. So really comfortable. They are adjustable. There's a little screw underneath here that you can loosen off, and that will allow you to adjust the angle. That's important. You want to experiment with that so you have the right angle on it so that you are staying in a really comfortable riding position, avoiding, you know, kind of the pins and needles effect that you can sometimes have. They are Herman's grips instead of ergon, which is interesting. They're still very comfortable, and as part of a commitment to sustainability, they don't actually use natural rubber or latex. We also, in terms of comfort, can go with a suspension fork. If you do choose that comfort option, this is an NCX 28-inch. With the rigid fork, which of course will help bring the weight a little bit down. You'll notice they've done some cool things here where the brake hose actually runs through the fork and exits at the bottom here, just to give you that really nice clean look. And that maybe is also a reason you may prefer going with the rigid fork instead of the suspension kit. It is a very cool look, but I don't think the look of the suspension fork really mars the overall image of it either. Package, you do get a suspension seat post here. It does have some adjustability. It's a very heavy duty diameter seat post, like the rest of the R&M's, 34.9 I believe. It's a good basic suspension seat post. If it were me, I would probably upgrade to the Connect. That's a pretty awesome post you can find on our website. It uses a dual spring system. They're made in Bellingham, and basically it emulates the rear suspension on a full suspension bike. So very, very comfortable. But even the suspension kit, this suspension seat post that comes with it, is quite effective at smoothing out the bumps. Is using their own custom seat post clamp. I'm not always a big fan of custom seat post clamps. If you wanted to change that, for example, to a quick release, a little bit harder to do because it is as a custom clamp. On the other hand, having it not as a quick release is probably a good idea. Generally, once you get the right seat height, you're not going to be adjusting it, and this would prevent somebody, or not prevent them, but making it less likely they're going to come along and swipe your suspension C-post. It is nice that it is a 2-bolt system here, so it is quite secure in terms of clamping that C-post in for you. It's nice looking, that clamp. I think that's why they went with a custom one. It really, the looks of this bike was really important to them. Continuing on the comfort here, this is a Selle Royale Essenza Plus saddle. This is actually a little bit narrower than we find typically on the R&Ms, but it's suitable for this style of bike and the type of riding you'll be in. It actually has some nice squishiness to it. Of course, you could always change the saddle if you wish. This is using recycled plastic and biosourced materials for the cover here. Again, part of that sustainability commitment. Keep you dry and not muddy, we've got these really nice fenders on the front and the rear. We even have the fender flap. Again, that's some way they could have saved some money by not having that on there, but that helps to prevent the splash of mud as you're riding. Interesting mounting here actually onto the fork here. We do have some adjustability, which is really important. I mean, we see sometimes on the less expensive bikes kind of made in Asia that they often use cheap fenders that can't be adjusted, and it drives our service guys mad because, you know, they really want to get that exactly right for you. So this is a really clever, innovative adjustment system that allows us to get that perfectly adjusted for you. And finally, I'll just point out the pedals here. They are a nice size, which is good. They've got grip tape, which will help maybe keep your feet from sliding off. So that's nice. A lot of times, the first thing we do when we get a new bike in is replace the pedals. It's nice that you don't necessarily have to do that. If you do ride in a lot of wet conditions or just ride a lot, the grip tape eventually won't be as effective and it will wear out. At that point, we've got some other good options for you that's going to give you some grip and still be nice and wide like that. To be thorough, we're going to check out all of the features of the bike, including the kickstand. It's mounted on the rear frame here. It's a nice mounting system, and it actually does have on the back here, see if I can show that to you. Well, you can see my fingers, sorry about that. There we go. There is a button here to be able to easily adjust the length, which is a nice feature to have, so we can make sure we've got the right amount of lean on the kickstand. Carrier, I already briefly mentioned. It is an MIC HD or MIK HD, 27 kilo max capacity, so you can put a MIK child seat on there, which is great. So this will accommodate any bags because of the side rails here, but the MIK or MIC system from Basel allows you to simply click a bag on or off very easily. Let me grab a bag and show you what I mean. So here's an MIK compatible bag. This is a double bag. They also make trunk bags that go on top. Why is it MIK compatible? It's because it has this plate here. And so this plate mates up with the rack, and basically it makes it really easy to slide it into place, push down, and now it's locked into place. And to release it, there's this key here that we use to push in the back. There's a little gray slot there. Press that key into there, and the bag comes off. And they make all sorts of baskets, dog baskets, bags, trunk bags, all sorts of things. Of course, you can use a regular bag on the rails here. I should point out there is only one set of rails, so if you put an MIK trunk bag on top, it may be hard to hang side bags. Fortunately, there is a MIK or MIC adapter now that actually has tubes on the side, so you can use a trunk bag and bags on the side as well. Interestingly, this may be the first R&M we've seen without the Bibia strap. Often they have a rubber strap on the back. Maybe they didn't like the look of it. Maybe, again, a cost thing. But yeah, it looks nice without that. Another interesting thing is, unlike most of the rest of the R&Ms, we don't have the option of a front carrier. Again, that's probably not going to be a big deal for most of our customers. You could put a trunk or a handlebar bag on there, but I think what they're going for is the look just wouldn't quite be right with the basket or the rack on front. But I guess that may or may not be the reason, but certainly you could add a handlebar bag if you wish. All right, so now that I've given you all of the details of the bike, I just want to take a moment to talk about why we really like Riese and Mueller as a company and the impact of their vision on the world. And after that, we're going to head out for a ride test. Feel free to skip to that if you wish. For me at Citrocycles, where your bike is made and who is making it is important to us. So for example, when you buy an R&M, whether it be the Culture or any of the rest of their fantastic e-bikes, not only are you buying a bike with great German engineering, right, but it's also a bike made by people that are treated well. It's made by a company that cares about transparency, sustainability, and the community. So R&M issues an annual transparency report, and they require transparency from their suppliers. That means you can be sure that everyone has been treated well and fairly. There's no forced labor, no child labor, and they're all using sustainable environmental practices. They have people from 40 different countries working in their factory in Germany. They provide language training on site. They source as much of their products from Europe as they can to reduce emissions. They use green power sources. They're focused on reducing waste and emissions. They don't just talk about it like we see a lot of companies, they actually do it. So for me, when I ride a bike, it's for me more than just a bike. I have a connection with my bike, and so R&M gets that. So it's comforting to know that not only is my bike enhancing my life, but the making of it improved the lives of others and was made in a sustainable way with our children's future in mind. So I'm riding the Culture Touring for the test ride here. And it's certainly such a really comfortable riding position with the swept-back bars here. I'm in an upright, relaxed riding position, and yet I have lots of control over the bike. I can see around me really well. Handles really well. It feels like a fun bike to ride. Now, because this is a touring version, I'm coming up to a stop sign. I do need to remember to downshift before I stop. And of course, that's the beauty of the Silent or the Vario. If you're in an urban environment, you need to stop unexpectedly, or there's a lot of stop signs, traffic lights. Then the nice thing with the Silent or the Vario is that you can downshift after you stop, not a problem. With the Touring, I'm going to have to remember to shift before I stop. I've been riding bikes a lot, so it's not a problem to remember that, and it does give me a little bit of a better climbing gear for the hills. But on the other hand, I ride all year. I mean, we've got some sun today. It's still unusually cold for March on Vancouver Island, so I'm bundled up. But, when I'm riding in the pouring rain, it is nice having a belt so that when you get home, you don't have to worry about cleaning and oiling your chain. So I'm on Tour Plus right now. It's very responsive. Really like Tour Plus. It's a great mode. We're going to try out a few other modes in a little bit. Brakes are very responsive, lots of modulation in them, so I can stop very easily, very quickly if I wish. Head down to sea level here so that we can then try out a hill. So far, quite comfortable over the curbs and bumps that I've gone over with I do have the suspension fork here, so that's helping to smooth out the ride, which is nice. Going to switch camera angles and we'll head up a hill. All right, so it's not a terribly steep hill, but I'm going to put it into turbo, and I'm going to keep a fairly high cadence here. See if I can check that out. I'm at 99 right now, 96. And no problem climbing up the hill, almost 20 kilometers an hour. Pretty easy. Oh, down to 18. No problem climbing up there. Let me try that again. And this time I'm going to choose a lower cadence and see if it makes any difference, because certainly that was pretty easy. And that's where I say it's surprising that it says it's 55 Newton meters of torque. So it feels a lot more powerful than that. Another chance to try out the brakes here. All right, so certainly it is good to have a higher cadence. You're going to be more efficient. The bike is going to be more efficient. But a lot of our customers are used to riding with a slower cadence. So I'm going to keep it about 60 and going a little bit slower because of that. Try pedaling a little bit harder. Back up to 17. So I don't notice a big drop off. Well, managed to get my cadence a little bit higher than I expected, up to 80 again. So I don't notice a huge drop off with the support at a lower cadence, but it's definitely more efficient. You are going faster. It's a little bit easier using a higher cadence. Guess I don't need turbo anymore. Next hill, I'm going to try out the sprint mode and see how that works. For now, I'll go back to Tour Plus. Nice battery saving mode. One of the interesting things about the culture is, I keep saying it's really comfortable, but it doesn't have the disadvantages sometimes you get with a comfort-oriented bike. It's still very agile. So, you know, got a little narrow section to get through there. No problem, because the bike handles incredibly well. I point that out because a lot of times with a real comfort-oriented bike, you know, the bars are really swept back, you're really upright. Often they tend to be a little bit heavy, cumbersome, and you get into a situation like that barrier in the trail, or, you know, maybe you have some other challenges like that on your commute where you need some agility. And it's not like you're mountain biking where, yeah, you know, it makes sense to have agility on a mountain bike. You think, oh, I'm just riding my bike in the city. What do I need agility for? But, you know, inevitably there's going to be some pothole you're going to have to avoid, or, you know, some emergency situation you need to get out of the way quickly. It's really nice knowing that you have a bike that can handle that, that can respond to what you need it to do. And that's what I really notice about the culture, is that it is very responsive, not only just from the motor, but just in terms of the handling in general, that it just handles incredibly well. It's a really interesting, because you can get on this bike and you can just relax, right? Like, you can just cruise, it's comfortable, going to the market, going to work, whatever. But there's also a part of it for me when I get on, it's like, oh, I want to go fast because it rewards that, right? It's like, oh, it doesn't take much to get up to that 32 kilometers an hour, cruising really quickly, 34. The thing is when you exceed the 32 kilometers an hour, you don't notice the motor kicking out. Like, it's so smooth. There's no resistance. It's pretty incredible. Okay, so here's a nice long climb. Let's try the sprint mode on that. And I'm just gonna, you know, go to my cadence screen on the app here. I'm around 100. And this is where you hear a little bit of noise from the motor in that sprint. And yeah, climbing up this hill, no problem. And again, this is like, what? How is it only 55 Newton meters? Because that's so easy. All right, so sprint mode's a lot of fun. Getting tired, so I'm going to put up to turbo. And now I'm getting full power. I don't have to spin really fast. That was fun. It is a fun bike. Like I say, you can just cruise on it. But, you know, when you give it that power, it responds right away. It's very rewarding. All right, let's try some gravel. With these Big Bend Plus tires, a 2-inch tire, I expect some good traction. If you were riding in a lot of wet conditions, maybe mud or slippery leaves or things like that, then it'd be worth considering changing the tires. The Schwalbe Marathon GT 365s, super popular tire around here. Of course, Vancouver Island, we do get some rain in the winter from time to time. And so those GT 365s are an all-season tire. By the way, just went over railroad tracks there, very smooth. handles it really well. So the GT365 is highly puncture resistant, a little bit more of an aggressive tread pattern for, you know, slicker, gravelly, muddy, leaf kind of conditions. And then they're an all-season tire, so they work really well in colder and wet conditions. But if you're mostly riding on stuff like this, these tires work really well on the gravel. Here's another example of when I talk about the agility and the importance of traction, that sort of thing. I've got kind of these bends here on the trail. It's gravel. And again, on a bike that's, you know, really comfort oriented, very upright, sometimes really swept back bars, hard to manage. Those corners, you really have to slow down because you might fall off. And it sounds silly, but it's true. If you don't have enough lateral stiffness in the bike, which just has plenty of, you can find those corners to be really difficult. But this bike handles it so well, it kind of makes you want to ride faster. Check out the brakes and stopping on the gravel here. That's what I love about the Magirus. There's lots of modulation. It's not just a on-off with your brakes, so you can really slow down quickly, but without locking up and skidding out. So that little climb there, I was on Tour Plus, and so I started pedaling harder. It was a little bit of a climb. Wasn't quite in the right gear, but the Bosch motor gives me that extra support that I need for climbing the hill. I didn't have to change modes. Now here I've got a descent. I'm going to need to change gears to climb the hill, and so we do that funny thing where we're kind of braking and kind of lightly pedaling so we can shift gears to climb. If I had the Silent with that Nexus hub or the Vario with the Enviolo hub, I would be able to shift in preparation for the climb while I'm coasting, whereas with the touring, of course, the pedals have to be turning in order to shift gears. Again, on the Tour Plus, it's like, boom, give it a little bit more power, climb up that hill, no problem. If I don't want to put the effort into it, I could just use turbo. Again, I'm cruising above the 32 km/h cutoff speed on the motor. Don't even notice. There's just no resistance there at all. And when the assistance kicks back in, once I get under 32, it's seamless. You really don't notice. Okay, I'm going to cruise up the hill here in turbo. I'm going to see how little effort I have to put into it on turbo to make it up. This part isn't too steep, but we've got a steeper section coming up here. Gear down a little bit. Yeah, even with that 55 Newton meters, it's not a problem. I'm doing, what, 12 kilometers an hour. Now, if I want to put more effort into it, it definitely rewards that. I'm up to 20, just like that, just by pushing on the pedals a little bit harder. Every now and then you can hear some tinkling in the fenders as stones make their way through there. It's nice having the fenders. Even on gravel, it keeps the stones from kicking up and keeps you dry. Well, this has been a lot of fun. I'm kind of reluctant to go switch with the Roadster, but I'll be curious to see, you know, how much of a difference that 85 Newton meters of torque makes on the hill. But so far, I've had no concerns. This has climbed up the hills, no problem. A lot of fun to ride, very comfortable. And again, that agility, it's so maneuverable and manageable in challenging types of terrain. Okay, so I'm going to try the same hill here with the Roadster. I've got it on turbo. And I'm not working at it particularly hard. I'm up to 20 kilometers an hour. Yeah, so without working at it very hard at all, 22, 23. Now here's the steep section. And again, I'm not working at all, and I can maintain 18, 19 kilometers an hour. So definitely that extra torque is coming into play here. I can just fly up the hill without having to work at it at all. Now, I made it up there no problem with the Culture, of course, with that SX motor. I did just have to gear down a little bit, push it a little bit, and, you know, made it no problem. If I didn't want to push at it, it was just a little bit slower. We try it one more time now with the Roadster, and I'm just going to work a little bit harder at it. Again, on that turbo mode, see what kind of difference I get on that. All right. So one more time on turbo. This time I'm going to pedal a little bit more. I'm up to 23, 24, 25, 28, 29. I'm almost at the 30 kilometers an hour. Now the steep part, down to 24. Still, I'm not working at it that hard. Motor's definitely a lot noisier, but I'm about 25, 26 kilometers an hour on there without even having to work terribly hard. So definitely the higher torque motor is going to make it faster up the hills, and I guess easier, but I didn't find it that hard at all with that SX drive. So hopefully this has been useful for you. If you have questions, you want to try it out, head over to our website at citruscycles.ca.